Good morning and welcome to the Peorian. I'm your host, Paul Gordon. Each year around the holidays, Central Illinois becomes a tourism hotbed. Well, there's the Peoria Santa Claus Parade, which at 125 years old is the country's oldest continuously running Christmas parade. And then there's the celebration in East Peoria, starting with the Festival of Lights Parade. That was one of the first such nighttime spectacles around when it started back in 1985. Do you remember what a novelty it was when it started? Of course, it could get pretty darn cold after the sun went down, especially when you stood or sat for hours, keeping a good spot for the family to watch the parade. If only, we thought, if only we could sit in our cars and enjoy the beautiful lights as they go past. Well, you can do the next best thing, of course. After the Festival of Lights parade, all the floats are taken to the top of Springfield Road Hill and integrated with more lighted displays to become Winter Wonderland. For years, the city opened Winter Wonderland a week after Thanksgiving, giving it time to bring the parade floats up the hill. That was when the parade was the Saturday after Thanksgiving. But this year, the parade was moved up a week so that Winter Wonderland could open on Thanksgiving. A couple of East Peoria officials are here today to talk about that decision and about the city's Festival of Lights celebration when we come back. Welcome back to the Peorian. My guests today are Dan Cunningham, Head of Tourism for the City of East Peoria and Chairman of the Festival of Lights, and Doug McCarty, Head of Operations for the Festival of Lights. And we're talking about that festival celebration in the City of East Peoria. This is the 27th year for the Festival of Lights Parade, which began in 1985. How many years has Winter Wonderland been in existence?
Well, one correction, it's our 28th year.
Oh, I am totally sorry about that.
Yeah. And Winter Wonderland's been in operation since 1993.
Okay.
So, doing the math, it's probably our 19th year.
So, it used to be, after the Festival of Lights Parade, we would see some of the floats here and there around the town.
Yeah. And I can speak to that history a little bit because I'm much older than Doug, but because I remember that when we had them setting in various locations and whatever, and then somebody came up with the idea, not myself, but somebody before me, and said, hey, let's do Winter Wonderland. And we put all the floats in one location, plus a tremendous amount of two-dimensional displays to accompany them, and this wonderful attraction was born.
Has it always been in the same location at VFW Park?
Yes.
Why was that place chosen?
I think it had the most, topography was perfect, you know, with the different layers and whatever. So, and, you know, people could wind through, and it gave us the aesthetics that we needed, you know, the backdrop for the floats and the lights, etc.
How many, as it winds through, how many miles does it go?
We claim it's 2.5, whatever, but it's a little over a mile, but we count both sides, you know, because you look at one side going through and the other coming out.
Yes,
so.
Okay. The big question that you probably get asked a lot, how many lights are involved with the whole Festival of Light celebration?
Well, I'll leave that to Doug. He screwed them all in. I think he thinks he did. He had a lot of help, but he did a big part of it, so.
You have two different types of lights. You have the strands of lights, like people decorate their Christmas tree with, that are on the floats. And then you have a second kind of light, what they call a C7 bulb. It's a bigger bulb. Those go in the two-dimensional displays that are all the stand-up displays at Winter Wonderland. Okay. I know for a fact, and we may touch on it later, but since January of this year, we've converted about 70,000 lights from the incandescent style to the LED style. Now the park will be completely 100% LED. Before last year's Wonderland, I would say probably 40% of the displays were LED. So now, you know, you take the 70,000, throw in another 40%. You know, we don't know the exact number, but
over 100,000,
150,000 or more just on the stand-up displays. There's some floats, Dan, I think he might know, 50,000 lights in just one float. The big steam train we have, some of the other big, larger floats, you know, 20, 30,000 lights. So together, I mean, it's a pretty good question, but I don't think we know the answer to that. But It's a lot of light bulbs.
How often do you have to replace bulbs that burn out?
With the new LED style, not nearly as much.
Okay.
The old incandescent style were a glass bulb, which if you drop them, step on it, mishandle it at all, breaks. These new LEDs are plastic covered,
Okay.
so if you step on them, drop them, they don't break. We've had to, so far this year, for preparing for this Wonderland, we've been in there for 3.5 weeks now. There's still some bulbs that are burnt out, but not nearly as many. I mean, we're just touching up here and there, 1 or 2 on a display, maybe just a bad bulb, maybe a bad socket, but in years past, it would be an all-night, 10 guys, 3-4 hours a night when it's dark, screwing light bulbs in and out. So it's definitely helped get things set up this year with the LED bulbs and the plastic covers.
Now, is every piece, every float, every piece from the parade integrated into Winter Wonderland?
Yes. There's 41 total floats that we have now. There was 9 this year, 9 or 10, I believe, that weren't in the parade that we took up the week before.
Okay.
So they were set in place, and then the Monday after the parade, the rest of them get taken up to the park and set in place, and from there get plugged in and ready for the Wonderland to be open.
But it's more than just parking them and plugging them in, right?
A little bit more. For the first 3 weeks of setup time in the park, we're trying to set up these 2-dimensional displays, and I'm trying to visualize where the floats will go, how big they are, if they'll fit properly, if it'll look good. So there's a little bit of planning going into making sure that we know where the floats are going to go. So from that point, there is a little bit of strategy involved. And then once they get them in there after the parade, we can kind of move some things around if we have to get them to fit in there.
And is that why you need several days in between the parade and the...
It always helps. They're just wrapping up, making sure we got the cords properly placed, just touching up final things, getting things cleaned up. It's just a lot nicer to have those few days in there. We used to go directly the night of, the next night, I believe, Sunday night would open the Sunday night after the parade, but getting those extra days in there really helps.
And Winter Wonderland will remain open through December 31st, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the nuts and bolts or the wires and lights of the floats and displays, and a little bit more about some of those floats. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Peorian. I'm with the 2 top dogs for the Festival of Light celebration in the city of East Peoria, Dan Cunningham and Doug McCarty. Guys, again, thanks for being here. We're talking about the Festival of Light celebration, and I want to get back to some of the nuts and bolts of the parade in Winter Wonderland. Even though the parade is one night, and Winter Wonderland is about 5 weeks, the season for the people who have to stage it and put it all on lasts much longer, correct?
Correct.
When do you start working on the next
It's
year?
12 months a year.
Really?
And we have this year we were very fortunate. It's our second year. Besides Doug and myself, we have another key cog, a gentleman named John Brochures, who's a retired fireman. Okay. And John's specialty with the fire department was maintaining all the equipment. He's got an extensive electrical background, about any kind of a background you could want. So he's basically brought new life to all our floats. The ones that go in the parade, etc. He primes them, he gets them ready. We probably rebuilt 8 floats this year. I mean, they were some fantastic things he did to them. Besides that, he made all the other floats safer. Some of these floats are 20 plus years old, and these vehicles and stuff that were put in them were used when we got them. So some of these things are pretty old. A lot of them are older than Doug in there. So I can't say that, but I can say that about him. But so he's come in, he's done a lot of wonderful things, and his special is he brings new life back into these things. And then the beautiful part is Doug takes those floats with the new life and he incorporates them into themes that we have in the park. Okay. And he's been spectacular at this, and taking the vehicles and making an auto zone or whatever. And I mean, I don't want to steal his thunder. He can tell you what he does, but it's really spectacular what he's been doing with them.
But it is more than just plugging these strands of lights or bulbs into a generator that's on each float, right? I mean, for example, there's so many of them that have moving parts on them as they are moving. Wheels that look like they're turning, the paddle wheel on the boat. How does that happen?
Those are all, they're control boxes, and we've actually gone from an old style mechanical that wheel just kind of turns in the lights to digital, and just getting with the technology to where we can program them to move faster, move slower, so many different stages, so where maybe a hand instead of 2 hands waving, we can get 4 or 5, things like that to really make them animate a lot better. That stuff all has to be taken off those floats, off those displays, stored. The displays, for example, a lot of them are so large we have to take them apart in pieces. So not just one big piece, there's maybe 5 or 6 pieces to that. So labeling, making sure you know what piece goes where, all that stuff, putting it away properly is going to help you the next year put it back together. So the same thing with the floats. There's some of the floats that are so large they have to be taken apart to be stored. Okay. So there's just more than just, we don't just park them and let them sit for 7 or 8 months and then, oh, it's parade time and let's go. So it is a 12-month operation. Go back to the LED conversion that we did this past year. We started in January. Had some guys, during the winter months help out bulbing. Had a church group come in. They volunteered once a month. Brought 15, 20 people in for 3 or 4 hours and knocked out a bunch of displays to convert over to LED. So we have a lot of help from the community, a lot of help from other workers in the city and things like that to make sure we can have this thing ready to go by Thanksgiving.
How often are floats retired or added to the parade?
We have not added a new float in about 3 or 4 years, and our premise has been we have some spectacular floats. We've made them safer. We've also enhanced them all. We have, as Doug mentioned, we're using digital controllers versus the old mechanical ones. We're putting new lights, more LED rope lights and stuff that makes these things more brilliant than they already were. So we're at that stage now. Probably next year we may dabble with a new display coming in, but Doug's been very fortunate. We have semi-trailers, 20 plus semi-trailers full of these displays and stuff, the 2-dimensionals, and Doug and his crew have been instrumental in going back and pulling some of these out of the archives and rebuilding them.
Okay. We need to take a break now, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the decision to move the parade up a week in order to open Winter Wonderland earlier. But first, here is our own Kevin Kaiser to talk about what's going on in the literary and culinary world. Stay tuned.
Thanks, Paul. Hey kids, get ready because this week it's another episode of Kevin Reads Stuff So You Don't Have To, History Edition. And the book is The Twilight War, The Secret History of America's 30-Year Conflict with Iran by David Crist. For 3 decades since the Iranian takeover of the American embassy in 1979, the United States and Iran have engaged in a secret war. In this book, Crist outlines the origins and background of the conflict, along with the military confrontations that have brought us to the brink of war several times. As a senior historian for the federal government with unparalleled access, Crist has spent more than 10 years researching and writing this book, and he breaks new ground on virtually every page. What struck me as one of the most defining moments between the two countries was when, after Iran had deceived the U.S. on trading weapons for hostages, see Iran-Contra, a new deal between the two countries was in place, but this time the U.S. reneged after the Iranians had delivered on their end. Sure, we could say we were justified because of the previous deceptions, but it just showed that neither country was willing to play fair, and that pretty much gets us to where we are today. And while it may be hard to believe, there is one funny story in this book. It's about an engineer named Michael Tilley on the USS Roberts. Tilley was a thorn in the side of the captain. He got in trouble on and off the ship and would drop the occasional smart-ass note in the suggestion box. One in particular read, "I never see the light of day. Can't you put a porthole in the engineer's space so I can see the sunlight?" He faced 3 captain's masts, but was allowed to stay on, invoking the rare Zach Mayo defense. Eventually, the USS Roberts was hit by an Iranian missile and nearly split in half, with the deck being the only thing holding the ship together. Tilley, instead of running topside as all were ordered, stayed down below to get the ship's generators running. Without power, they were plunged into darkness and unable to fight the fires that were consuming the vessel. Only one generator was operable, but with no power, the start button was useless. So the only alternative was a suicide start, which involved releasing high-pressure air into the engine to give it a jump. But if it didn't work, the engine would fly apart, hence the moniker suicide start. Tilley was lowered into the room housing the generator, and amazingly, with a blast of air, the engine came to life, and the lights came on throughout the ship. If it hadn't been for Tilley's bravery, the ship would undoubtedly sunk. A few weeks later, while the ship was in dry dock, the captain found another note in the suggestion box from Mr. Tilley. This one read, "Captain, with regards to the request for a porthole in the main engineering space, you exceeded my wildest dreams." So there you have it, another episode of Kevin reads stuff so you don't have to, and the book is The Twilight War, The Secret History of America's 30-Year Conflict with Iran by David Crist. And as always, you are welcome.
Welcome back to the Peorian. My guests today are Dan Cunningham and Doug McCarty, both of the city of East Peoria, and two of the top honchos in the Festival of Lights celebration there. Winter Wonderland opened earlier than usual this year on Thanksgiving night. And the only way that that could happen was by moving the Festival of Lights parade to the Saturday before Thanksgiving, after all these years of being on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. How did that affect attendance at the parade, if at all?
Well, I was in the first float,
Okay.
pulling the color guard, and I've been participating in the parade probably for 20 of those 28 years. And in the last 10 to 15 years, I'd say this was the largest crowd I can remember seeing. You know, a lot of it was probably, we had beautiful weather, but I think a lot of it was, you know, hey, people could come out and enjoy it. It didn't take away from their holiday celebration and whatever. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't as smooth as we think. We had people that weren't happy about it, that had traditions and whatever. But as I explained, this give 180 city employees that haven't had a Thanksgiving holiday in 28 years the opportunity to have one finally with their families. And a lot of people think, well, I never thought of that. And so
I didn't either till you just mentioned it.
yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing for everybody. Plus, as Doug's taken all those floats that were in the parade, they're up in Winter Wonderland. So if you missed the parade, you can come up there now and see it. And then the other big thing was all these people that come home for their holiday, for Thanksgiving holiday, the family, Winter Wonderland was never open.
Right.
So they didn't get to experience the full thing. So now they can experience everything we've got to offer.
I can imagine that this decision to change the dates was not taken lightly. And you said that some people think that you moved it up too much. Who made the decision?
We sat down last year, a group of city employees, and said, what do we need to do? The Winter Wonderland was kind of, the numbers were showing people weren't coming. The parade, the floats were getting, dangerous, unsafe to drive. Just honestly, we needed to make a change. And we sat down as a group and said, what do we need to do? And, the idea of opening it up early, got thrown out there. The idea, as honest as we want to be, was get rid of the parade completely. That was thrown in the equation a little bit, and ultimately we decided let's try it. Let's try something new. To me, we do have Santa Claus in the parade, but other than that, it's really not a holiday parade. We've got dinosaurs and cars and other things for the kids, Star Wars themes, things like that. So there's a little touch of Christmas in there, but for the most part, even Winter Wonderland, there's really one little section that's kind of Christmas oriented or holiday oriented. Everything else is themed with different movies and different cartoons and things like that. So to me, it's just more of an overall, wintertime festival type thing. And so that kind of, to me, I think we threw that in the equation too and said, let's try something new.
Now, your history, Winter Wonderland history, has shown that the years where, because Thanksgiving fell sooner in the month, earlier in the month, the longer Winter Wonderland was open, the more revenue was generated. This will help you generate more revenue each year, correct?
Yeah. And we found last year with some of the new things that we did that revenue was up over $100,000 last year over the previous year. Now, some of that was we were open an extra day or so. A lot of it was we had perfect weather, if you remember last winter, and the one before was nasty. But we think it was some of the fresh ideas. As I mentioned earlier, Doug's come in with a new vision and setting up Winter Wonderland, so it looks different every time somebody comes through, and I think that played a part as well.
How soon before you know for sure that the decision to move everything up was a good one? After all the numbers are generated, or?
After that, I think we're feeling good now with the parade, and I think we're going to open up Thursday night. We're hoping for big crowds, to come out with that holiday and, spend that Thanksgiving traditional holiday out share it with us.
Has a decision been made it's going to keep going beyond this year, or will it be made afterwards this year, whether to keep it
I would
early?
guess we would get together and reevaluate it, but I think, one of the things we had to look into too also was our weekend crowds. We had
Right.
traffic going down the hill, blocking intersections all the way back to the interstate. So opening an extra week gives an extra weekend to maybe spread out that traffic and maybe not, block our intersections as much. So there's a lot of little things that went involved into making a decision.
Thank you for being here, gentlemen. Quickly, Winter Wonderland is open 5 to 9 Monday through Thursday, and then until 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. The cost is $10 per car or family van, and it's open through December 31st. I hope you've enjoyed today's program and that we were able to answer some of your lingering questions about the Festival of Lights Parade and Winter Wonderland, or at least get you pumped up about checking it out this year. So stay tuned, tune in next week for another episode of The Peorian. And you can watch this episode and previous episodes on our website, thepeorian.com. Have a good week.
Ooh.